We found out today that Madam Web is coming to the Sony Spiderverse. The character has a long history in Marvel Comics and even more so in Marvel Animation. So we have to ask, what does Madam Web mean to Sony Spiderverse? Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Comic Book Nostalgia. I'm CB Nostalgia, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the recent announcement that Madam Web is joining Sony's Spiderverse. But before we get started, I really need your support. Make sure you click like and subscribe and ring the bell if you want more of this content, and really please comment below because comments always help. So after all the Spider-Man hullabaloo in recent weeks, it shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody that Sony is moving forward with expanding their Spider-Man universe. The guys over at Collider are reporting this morning that the studio has enlisted Morbius writer Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless to pen a new script for Madam Web, which will be set in their new live-action Spider-Verse. Now, if you don't know who Madam Web is, she made her first appearance way back in Amazing Spider-Man number 210, which was in 1980. But there have been multiple versions of the character. Madam Web, at least in her classic form, possesses a wide variety of psychic powers including telepathy, clairvoyance, and prescience. But it might not even be that version. Now, in the comics, there has been another version of Madam Web more recently. They may bypass the original Cassandra Webb version of Madam Web, who has a rather unique look, and shift to the more modern version, Julia Carpenter. Now, if you don't know who Julia Carpenter was, in the comics she was actually the second Spider-Woman, and actually made her first appearance way back in 1984 in Secret Wars number 6. Now, she became Madam Web during the 2009-2010 Spider-Man storyline known as The Grim Hunt. I won't give too many spoilers, but basically, Madam Web was mortally wounded in the story and transferred her telepathic, precognitive, and astral projection powers to Julia, making her the new Madam Web and Weaver of the Spider family. But it also made her blind. I find this really interesting. For those that remember, Spider-Man the Animated Series had an episode that featured Madam Web, and this may have tipped Sony's hand just a little bit, and seems to have given us some clue where Sony hopes to head next in their Spider-Verse. In the finale episodes, Madam Web, which by the way was voiced by Stan Lee's wife, Joan, gathered Spider-Man from alternate dimensions and then sent them on a mission to save the multiverse. With Sony's success on the Into the Spider-Verse animated movie, you could very well see where they may be heading with this. Now, I have to say, I'm a little tentative on this. Madam Web in the comics is a pretty amazing character, but fairly complicated to bring to the big screen. The classic look is, well, unique, and not sure how it translates. But I really very well could see them doing a hybrid involving Julia Carpenter, or just mixing the two characters together. Now, with the rest of the Spider-Verse starting to form up, we know Venom 2 is happening, and we know Morbius is happening, and Tom Holland returning to Sony. There's a lot of pieces in play here. It's pretty easy to see Sony using Madam Web to tie all these things together and explain some of the absence of other Marvel characters and their existence in the multiverse, all while not causing audiences to disconnect too much. This all becomes dependent on how Sony delivers it, and that may be the problem. We haven't seen Sony deliver a live-action Spider-Man movie that worked in a really long time, and even their more recent successes, Venom and Into the Spider-Verse, were both ghost-produced with Kevin Feige, so we have no idea how they'll stand on their own. Let's not forget, after the disaster that was Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sony came along with a lot of other ideas that fell flat on their face. Anybody remember Aunt May the movie? This is what led them to be part of the Marvel Universe in the first place. The character needed a reboot, and Sony had failed repeatedly to connect with audiences. A character like Madam Web will be exponentially harder to make that happen, and if she's going to serve as the glue for their Sony universe, kind of like a Nick Fury, they really have to make this work. If Sony is able to pull this off, they kind of have the perfect puzzle piece here to tie all these different Spider-Man pieces into one place, and kind of have the perfect character to serve as a narrator for most of these adventures and to drive some of the stories forward. Building on the success that was Into the Spider-Verse and driving that into the live-action venue that Sony's trying to take over with Spider-Man, that could be a pretty wise move. There are so many versions of Spider-Man that the possibilities are pretty endless, and could allow Sony to capitalize on some of the likenesses and similarities of those other characters, all while not depending on one particular version of Spider-Man to bring in the cash. Once we have more details about this project, we'll let you know. I do find it fascinating, and an interesting glimpse into where Sony may be headed with Spider-Man. What do you guys think? Would you go see a Madam Web movie? And do you think Sony's laying the groundwork for their own multiverse of Spider-Man? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you press like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you won't get any updates. Peace.